Previously, Ji-woo ended up beating Jisuk's friends who wanted to bully him, so in revenge, Jisuk fought with Ji-woo and appeared to be too strong for our softie. However, when Ji-woo's leg got injured in a fight, Jisuk let him go, saying that they would fight when his leg would heal. And Ji-woo got sad over his own weakness. In-hyuk is extremely angry at Jisuk for fighting Ji-woo, saying that he clearly told him to not engage with Ji-woo. In reply, Jisuk tells In-hyuk that he couldn't simply let Ji-woo go after he beat up his friends. However, In-hyuk knows that he is just using it as an excuse to fight, as he is aware of what his friends did. He reminds him that Ji-woo isn't like Jisuk. He was groomed from birth to live as an awakened one and trained properly. But on the other hand, Ji-woo's powers have been like a curse for him, as he has avoided people his whole life because of them and didn't live a normal life. He proceeds to tell Jisuk more about Ji-woo, saying that Ji-woo moved homes every single year because of his powers, and since he was extremely careful to not show them to anyone, no one knew about his awakened identity. That is the kid that Jisuk bullied, and In-hyuk asks what he is going to do when his sister, the chairwoman, finds out about this. Since Jisuk didn't cause Ji-woo serious harm, he wants In-hyuk to keep quiet and not tell her. Jisuk feels like his sister Ji-young is way too sensitive and thinks that she is living a miserable life as she is single, locked in her office, and working all day. Despite everything he just said, In-hyuk stays silent, as he can see that Ji-young is standing right behind Jisuk. When Jisuk realizes that, he almost wet his pants. Ji-young invites him to spar with her, so Jisuk begs In-hyuk for help, but there ain't no one protecting him from the butt-whopping he is about to receive. At his home, Ji-woo appears to be lost in thoughts, and when Kaden inquires him about it, he says that there is no reason, but Kaden could tell that he is sad because he just lost to someone in a fight. To cheer him up, Kaden tells him that only an imbecile would pick a fight with someone who has just found out about his identity. However, when he sees that Ji-woo is still perplexed about it, he tells him that he can't just expect to become something special after only practicing for a few days. He is impressive when compared to a normal person, but against another awakened one, he is just a fledgling newbie who doesn't know jack. Well, the great daddy Kaden was strong since birth, so there's that. But he was just saying all this to help Ji-woo. He thinks that Ji-woo should be thankful that he is alive, but Ji-woo doesn't like losing and is extremely sad because of that. Kaden then inquires if the kid he fought with also had the same ability as In-hyuk, so Ji-woo says yes and tells him that he used wind to attack and improve his speed. Ji-woo's main thing is his speed, but he thinks that Jisuk had the same speed as him on top of other abilities, and moreover, he was experienced unlike him. However, Kaden thinks that Ji-woo is foolish to say that they both had the same speed and asks if he was really moving at his fastest speed. He somehow knows that Ji-woo must have tried to slow down his speed just so he could extend the time he could use his abilities. Indeed, that was the case, and the kid he was fighting with used wind to boost his physical attributes, and since he was dividing his abilities to attack and move fast at the same time, he must be slower than Ji-woo. Ji-woo is shocked to hear that he is actually faster than Jisuk, and to put the cherry on top, Kaden tells him that even he is impressed by his highest speeds. The main reason Ji-woo was upset was because he thought Jisuk was faster than him when speed is his advantage. But since he now knows that it isn't the case, he feels a bit better. Since Ji-woo has a rematch with Jisuk, Kaden thinks that they should focus on his combat skills and strength control, as the time is too short to improve his awakened powers. Ji-woo is extremely happy to see that Kaden is ready to help him, and later that night, Ji-woo practices his striking against a punching bag whilst using his super speed. He practices so much that he doesn't go to school. However, the great sleep disturber comes, and after waking Ji-woo up, he angrily tells him to gather his energy even when he is sleeping. When Ji-woo sleeps again, Kaden bitch slaps him to wake him up. Meanwhile, the news that Ji-woo isn't coming to school for some days reaches Ji-young, and In-hyuk even tells her that he is trying to contact him, but he can't reach him. Since he isn't coming to school after fighting with Ji-suk, In-hyuk thinks that the fight broke his spirit and that Ji-suk's aggressiveness might have been too much for him to handle. In-hyuk tears up at the thought that Ji-woo might be shunning the outside world and shivering in fear, so he wants to pay him a visit, but little does he know. The cinnamon roll plans to answer Ji-suk back with his fists and a little sprinkle of cuteness. So In-hyuk, hold your anime tears as the softie is entering his training montage. During their spar, Ji-young absolutely went ham on Ji-suk, and he thought that his sister has a dominant personality, and maybe that's why she is still single. Soon his friends come and ask how hard he went on Ji-woo, as he wasn't coming to school. They wonder if he is maybe admitted in a hospital, and hearing that Ji-woo might transfer to another school because of his beating, Ji-suk starts sweating. Well, he is sweating for nothing, as our boy is just training until his body gives out and is ready to make him remember his forefathers. Just after a few days of training, Ji-woo can tell that he is better and feels different because he feels like his powers are flowing faster than before. Of course, it was bound to happen, as Ji-woo didn't know anything before, but now he has started to learn combat skills and can better control his power. However, Caden bursts his bubble and tells him that he still has a long way to go, as he is still too weak. Ji-woo replies that he isn't Caden, who is just overpowered. With a smug smile on his face, Caden thinks that the world would end if there was another level 69 Riz Lord like him in the world. Ji-woo's body is so tired that he wants to just lay on the floor, but Caden makes him get up as he still has to train more. However, Ji-woo wants to feed the cats first and gives them dinner with shaky hands that are tired from training. Even if he is tired, Ji-woo never forgets to feed the cats. And Caden thinks that if he spends this time in training instead of looking after the cats, he would be a lot stronger by now. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and Ji-woo sees that In-hyuk is waiting outside. Caden wonders why he is here, since In-hyuk belongs to the same association as Ji-suk. However, they decide to let him in, and the first thing that In-hyuk does is apologize for what Ji-suk did. He then says that he tried to contact Ji-woo, but since he couldn't reach him, he came in person as he was worried about him. Ji-woo remembers that he turned his phone off while training with Caden, and seeing his face, In-hyuk thinks that Ji-woo looks pale and must be so traumatized by Ji-suk that he didn't even sleep. He realizes that he promised to help him, but someone from his group picked a fight with him and thinks that Ji-woo must be feeling betrayed by this. He then proceeds to tell him that Ji-suk is the chairwoman's brother, and her name is Ji-young-yu. Since he is her brother, Ji-suk has trained under the best, so he has a tendency to do what he wants. In-hyuk tells them that Ji-young personally punished Ji-suk not too long ago. He apologizes to him yet again, saying that Ji-suk won't bother him again. However, Ji-woo remains silent, and it makes In-hyuk think that Ji-woo is too furious, and apologizing won't make up for his injuries. Little does he know that our cinnamon roll is only worried about if he would get to fight Ji-suk again. He tells In-hyuk that Ji-suk asked him for a rematch when his leg would heal, and he intends to honor the commitment, making In-hyuk think that he is a proud, reckless teenager, but it's better than being depressed at least. Despite that, he doesn't want Ji-woo to fight with Ji-suk, as he has been training under the best since he was young, and there aren't many stronger than him at his age. So he thinks that Ji-woo shouldn't be upset about losing to him. However, Ji-woo doesn't care about losing and just wants to test how strong he is. Hearing this, Daddy Caden proudly smirks as his child is finally acting like an awakened one. When In-hyuk agrees to set up a fight, Ji-woo's face starts to brighten up, and he thanks In-hyuk. Inside his mind, In-hyuk wonders if he was mistaken to think about Ji-woo as a scared doofus, as now he sees that Ji-woo is ready to show himself to the world as an awakened one. He then sees Caden sitting in a very human-like position, and seeing him, Ji-woo wonders if he suspects something about Caden. However, with a really serious face, In-hyuk asks Ji-woo if he can rub Kaiden's belly. I mean, who wouldn't want to rub such a thick boy? I personally would love to rub Kaiden's belly, in either form. As he reaches out towards Kaiden, his bloodlust forces him to put his hand away. Young gets shocked when she learns that Ji-woo wants to fight Jisuk, even after In-hyuk explained Jisuk's background to him. He tells her not to worry, as he will take care of the fight location himself and will preside over the event so Ji-woo won't get seriously injured. When In-hyuk leaves the room, he stumbles upon Jisuk, who asks him about Ji-woo. In-hyuk tells him that Ji-woo wants to fight him in 5 days when his leg completely heals, and advises him to be prepared for it before leaving. Jisuk thinks that maybe Ji-woo is acting so confident because he let him off easy last time and it got to his head. Meanwhile, Ji-woo is doing push-ups and Kaiden instructs him to get stronger physically so his strength and speed will improve. Ji-woo keeps complaining like a little toddler, and our thick boy feels irritated. As he is doing push-ups, he suddenly feels heavy, and when he realizes that Kaiden jumped on his back, he tells him that he is too heavy. But Kaiden orders him to stop whining like a baby, saying that he might be the fattest cat to ever exist, but he isn't heavy. Later, while Ji-woo is practicing his punching, Kaiden tells him that his awakened abilities aren't helping his movement, and he isn't using his true powers to throw punches, so he instructs him on how to get better. That night, Kaiden notices that Ji-woo is finally able to gather his powers in his sleep, and thinks that Ji-woo hasn't even complained once, even though he was pushing him hard, but on the contrary, he seems to be enjoying it, making the fat cat wonder if Ji-woo is a masochist. When Ji-woo abruptly wakes up, Kaiden tells him that he was finally gathering energy in his sleep, and Ji-woo gets really happy about it. He thanks Kaiden, as he is having so much fun with him, and even though his body is aching, his powers never felt so unrestrained, and it was all thanks to Kaiden's training. If it wasn't for Kaiden, Ji-woo would have lived his life cowering in fear, but because of Kaiden, he finally knows who he is, a cute as F doofus. When Kaiden tells him to keep up the good work, he loudly says, "Yes, sir," which startles the other cats, so he apologizes to them. He continues to train hard, and on the day of the fight, he gets ready, and Kaiden tells him to not be nervous, as he isn't fighting to the death. And In-hyuk is presiding over the event so he won't get seriously injured. When In-hyuk arrives to pick him up, he sees that Ji-woo is holding the cat with him. Ji-woo tells him that he feels uneasy to go alone, so In-hyuk agrees as he feels that the cat is tame and nice, not knowing that it's the sassiest cat in all of history. When they reach the Shinhwa Association headquarters, Ji-woo is in awe of everything around him, and Kaiden is annoyed by him, as he is acting all friendly on unfriendly grounds. Damn, Kaiden looks cuter than me annoyed than I look when I'm cheerful. He didn't want to come here, but of course. The daddy Kaiden couldn't have let his cinnamon roll go by himself. Sensing a huge amount of energy, he thinks that there is only one possible person here who could possess such strong energy, and realizing that it's coming from Ji-young, he thinks that her being one of the strongest awakened ones in Korea wasn't a rumor after all. In-hyuk then takes them to meet Ji-young, and seeing her, Ji-woo feels like what it truly means to be a man. I mean, Ji-young can ruin my life. And all I would say is, when is the next appointment? Even Kaiden and In-hyuk are surprised by how much he is blushing, but Ji-woo is just in shock as he expected the chairwoman to be someone older. Making her way to him, Ji-young introduces herself to Ji-woo, saying that she is Ji-young-yu, the chairwoman of Shinhwa, and Ji-woo shyly introduces himself in return, saying that he's just a friendly neighborhood doofus. She then asks for his permission to say something, and when he says yes, she asks him if he has changed his mind about fighting Jisuk. So Ji-woo tells her no. She reminds him that Jisuk is too strong for someone who just found out that he is an awakened one, and moreover, he is very experienced when it comes to fighting. Despite knowing about everything, Ji-woo is still bent on fighting him no matter what. Ji-young realizes that there is no one changing his mind, and Ji-woo thanks Ji-young for worrying about him. He wants to defeat him, but knows that he will probably lose. But winning or losing doesn't matter to him anymore. What's more important is for the coward he once was to find out how well he can perform. Even Caden is impressed by that sophisticated reply. They then go to the training area where his fight is scheduled, and Ji-woo is in awe of how big it is. Not what she said. In-hyuk anxiously waits for Ji-suk to arrive as he is late. And when he does arrive, In-hyuk gives him a scary stare. Ji-suk makes an excuse, saying that he had a class, but In-hyuk knows that he isn't the type to go to every single class anyways. Seeing Ji-woo, he asks why he hasn't shown himself at school for a few days, so Ji-woo replies that he was at home training. He asks Ji-woo if he thinks he can beat him with just a few days of training, and sensing his energy, Caden knows that Ji-suk isn't just proud for show, but he is actually pretty strong for his age, so he understands why Ji-woo lost to him. Ji-woo gets ready for the fight, and as soon as the fight starts, Ji-suk closes in on him in an instant and punches his ribs and his face. Ji-woo is yeeted to the ground, and Ji-suk asks if that was all he had to offer after all that training. This is where the video ends. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.